You're listening to the Greek's Gridiron, live with Athan Hristodulu.
All right, everybody, welcome back to the Greek's Gridiron. I am Athan Hristodulu. It is January 12th, 2022, and today, with Week 18 wrapping up this past weekend, we are now doing our previews for all 6 of the Super Wild Card Weekend playoff matches. I'll be doing, the plan is to have 2 videos a day for you guys, and we will be starting with the Bengals and Raiders here today. So make sure, if you're excited about the playoffs, or if you enjoy what we're doing here, or anything like that, you hit that like button, hit that sub button so you don't miss any of the content I have coming for you guys this week. I'm going to be going over each and every single playoff game individually, rather than doing a giant NFL picks video that I've been doing throughout the majority of the season. So let's get started and talk about some playoffs, shall we? So again, we're doing the Raiders at the Cincinnati Bengals. This is going to be an interesting playoff match here. This is 2 teams that have already gone toe-to-toe earlier in the season, with the Bengals getting the upper hand in I believe it was a 32-13 win. So it wasn't a very close game for the Raiders, albeit that was around the same time where the Raiders were dealing with a lot of drama going on in the team. And this Raiders team, at this point in the season, is arguably one of the most battle-tested teams going into the playoffs, considering all of the losses they've had, from head coach to first-round picks in very important positions on cornerback, wide receiver. They have lost a lot, and they just lost Darius Philon, who was a beast in that Chargers game for them just this past week. So, I mean, they're dealing with a lot going into this one. Now, before we really start deep diving into things and whatnot that I feel will separate these 2 teams and what's going to matter most, I want to talk about the X factors, the players that are going to make the biggest difference, in my opinion. For the Bengals, it's pretty simple and straightforward, in my opinion, for the most part. You have Joe Burrow, one of the best up-and-coming quarterbacks, and depending on who you ask, one of the best quarterbacks in the league. You got wide receiver Jamar Chase, the rookie, who has just stormed onto the league and shattered all rookie receiving records, it feels like. You thought Randy Moss's rookie year was impressive. Jamar Chase has played out of his mind. You have to respect 266 yards and 3 touchdowns off of 11 receptions. My goodness. And then, of course, the running back, Joe Mixon. The offense as a whole, in every skill position, is pretty much a giant X factor. But the one that I feel is going to make the biggest difference in this game, if he has a great game, and somebody that should not be lost, who was a massive free agent signing for this team and produced, I think, far better than anyone would have expected, because I remember people saying he was a product of the team he was on last year, has got to be defensive end Trey Hendrickson. 14 sacks on the year. The guy left the Saints, and I remember a lot of people saying, oh, well, he's playing alongside a really good edge rusher in Cam Jordan. It's only helping him out. Well, take him off the Saints, insert him into the Bengals, and what do you got but a monster career-high 14 sacks? The guy's been disruptive. He has been by far the biggest free agent signing for this team, and I think is going to be a key factor going into this game and disrupting the pass for the I almost said the Oakland Raiders there, the Las Vegas Raiders, and basically shutting down that vaunted aerial attack that they have. Now, on the flip side, when you look at the Raiders, who do they have? Who are the big important pieces here? Of course, you have the quarterback, Derek Carr. He had a really great season this year, passing one of the top 5 passing yard throwers in the league. On top of that, you have, I don't even really want to call him an emerging threat, because Hunter Renfrow has been playing really well for a while, but with the absence of Darren Waller, he has really stood out. So Hunter Renfrow, a guy, the go-to guy essentially for Derek Carr in Waller's absence. Then, of course, Max Crosby, the guy that was not supposed to be the star edge rusher, in comparison to the guy that they took in the first round with Clelin Ferrell just, a couple of years ago now. Max Crosby has been a beast on that defensive line for them. But the biggest one, in my opinion, and the one that we cannot forget, who is just coming back from an injury, he was able to play a bit in Week 18 and was, of course, a piece in that big victory over the Chargers, tight end Darren Waller. I mentioned him while I was talking to Hunter Renfrow. He missed about, I think it was 5 weeks from 12 to 18. So, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17. Yeah, 5 weeks or so he's missed. And I think sorely missed at that. He is such an integral piece to what they do on the ground and what they do through the air. Of course, one of the best, arguably, I would say one of the best receiving tight ends in the game today. The guy is an absolute threat to make a play on just about any passing down. You cannot count him out, and I think the Raiders getting him back just in time for their playoff run has got to be probably one of the biggest size of relief for this team that has dealt with just so much adversity this season. You cannot count them out, especially with the addition of Darren Waller now. Like I said, they're one of the most battle-tested teams in the league, and to have a guy like him coming back to be in the offensive fold for them, the Cincinnati Bengals, one of the worst pass defenses in the league, needs to look out. And on that topic, that'll lead me into what I am going to be calling my keys to the game, essentially. Just kind of important little matchups that I think will ultimately lead or are just things that are worth watching as we go into this game and will lead to the end result and our final score and who ends up moving on into the divisional round of the playoffs. The first one that I have listed in my notes here has got to be the Raiders' air attack going up that Bengals pass D. And I just mentioned it. The Bengals, not really great when it comes to defending the pass, especially over the middle. The Raiders have been an absolute juggernaut in the air this year, 268.6 yards a game. That has them at 6th best in the league. Meanwhile, the Bengals' pass defense has been sitting pretty much at the bottom for a very large portion, if not almost the entirety of the season. 248.4 yards per game puts them at about 26th in the league. So they're sitting at the bottom there with some of the worst teams in the league when it comes to defending the pass. I think one of the biggest examples of this that I have in my notes here, and this is one that until I went back and actually looked at the game numbers, was really shocking to me. When they played the Jets, a lot of people were wondering, what the hell happened? How did the Jets come out here and pull out a massive upset? Well, I think it was like a 3-point game, 34-31. You have to look at what was going on in the middle of the field, specifically with the linebackers. And Logan Wilson, if you did not know this, during that game was targeted a whopping 16 times and allowed 14 receptions for 190 yards. That middle of the field seems to just kind of let things get in and out, whether it's the linebackers or maybe a bad play here or there by one of the corners. They get targeted, and not only do they get targeted a lot, and it seems like somebody's just always letting up something, and thankfully the offense is so dominant over there in Cincinnati, maybe it covers up some of those deficiencies a little bit, because when it comes to those high-scoring shootout affairs, the Bengals can definitely keep pace if they need to. The Raiders' air attack has been pretty solid all year long, if not great when you're talking about them. They obviously took a hit with the loss of Henry Ruggs earlier in the year. However, like I said, I don't really want to call him emerging, but Hunter Renfrow has been fantastic this year. And then, of course, Darren Waller coming back from injury. It's going to test this Bengals defense without a doubt, and I'm very curious to see how this matchup ends up playing out, because I think that the Raiders are in a much different state as opposed to the first time these two teams met, and that pass D needs to be able to slow this passing offense down at least a little bit going into this one if you're Cincinnati. Next one that I'm looking at here has got to be just the Bengals' ability to score going up against a Raiders defense that seems to let everybody score. When you look at what the Bengals' offense averages per game, they're sitting at 27.81 points a game. 27.1, which puts them at 8th in the league is where I got that number from there. Meanwhile, the Raiders defense is allowing an average of about 25.8 points a game, which puts them at 26th in the league. And then to double down on that, just some things to note here, and it was when I was going through the score lines of both of these teams' games, the Bengals have been able to put up 32 or more points 7 times this year. That's 7 times. To put it in perspective, we're playing a 17-game schedule, and the other games that weren't those 32, you had a handful of 24s. I believe there was a 28 in there. So, I mean, they're averaging 27.1 points a game. They can put up the numbers. Meanwhile, when you look at what the Raiders have done defensively this year, they've actually allowed 32 or more points 5 times this year themselves, which includes that 32-13 loss to the Bengals that they had back in Week 11 earlier this year. So I guess the big question that I have with this one, and Raiders fans, you can let me know and how you think about this one, and Bengals fans as well. Of course, I'm talking to you guys. Can the Raiders keep up with Joe Burrow and company should this game get into a serious shootout? Now, we just talked about it. If it becomes one of those games where it's a passing attack type of game where, Burrow and Derek Carr are taking their shots, and, we've seen what the Bengals offense can do. We've seen what the Raiders offense can do. The Raiders have one of the most efficient passing attacks, so don't the Bengals. And the Raiders pass defense is solid to pretty good depending on the week, whereas the Bengals are kind of miserable when it comes to defending the pass. This could lead to a very high-scoring affair, in my opinion, and it's definitely something I'm keeping an eye on as we go into this game. And to double down on that whole high-scoring affair idea that I have, this comes to my third key point here, which is basically, for both of these teams, fourth down is the money down. I mean, these are two teams that not only can they really get after it and put up points on the board and move the ball effectively and put up a ton of yards in games, they're able to take that risk on fourth down and get the job done. That's just how effective these offenses are. If they can't get it done in 3 downs, odds are they can get it done on fourth down. And the reason I say this is because both of these teams are top 10 in fourth down conversions on offense. You look at the Bengals, they have converted 65%. That's third best in the league on fourth down off the 20 attempts that they had, which is a big deal because that's 25th in the league. That is one of the lowest amount of attempts in the league, and to get the job done at 65% a clip, that is fantastic. And then the Raiders, literally right behind them, they're sitting at 63.2% on the fourth down conversions, which is 6th in the league, and they've done that off of only 19 attempts, which that's 27th lowest in the league. Both of these teams can not only get the job done on fourth down and gamble and take that risk and succeed effectively, but they haven't really had to do it too often, and they're doing it at such a high percentage. Both teams, they can get the job done if they need to. If 3 downs isn't enough, 2/3 of the time, 4 downs is enough. I mean, I expect these teams to take a risk or two going into this game. Playoffs are on the line. They're effective when it comes when it comes down to it. Expect this game to potentially get into a shootout. Expect both teams to be aggressive. Do not expect either of these teams to be afraid to go for it on fourth down. And realistically speaking, I would not be shocked if this game really starts to push the over, and we'll get into that in a second. But I firmly expect these two offenses, because I feel like there's weaknesses in the defenses on both sides for this game to maybe get a little bit out of hand with just how aggressive both of the offenses can be. Now, before we get into the over-unders and all that stuff, we'll talk scores and winners and whatnot. Let's talk one big disadvantage for both of these teams, because I have identified one thing on both teams that I think is really probably like an X factor for them in terms of what the other team should target as they go into this game and just keep an eye on. The Bengals, despite all the offensive success that they have had this year, have allowed 55 sacks on the year. That has them ranked at 30th in the league. Only 2 more teams have more sacks than they do. Somehow the Bengals offense has been so effective despite the fact that Burrow is getting mauled behind his offensive line, and that is something that they really needed to work on this past offseason, and they did a little bit, and I was pushing for Penei Sewell to go to the Bengals. Obviously, they went Jamar Chase, and the rest is history, and I've eaten my words each and every single week. I've watched the guy play and catch passes from Burrow, but that is something the Bengals really need to watch out for. They need to make sure they can keep Joe Burrow clean if they want to be successful going into this game. Now, for the Raiders, the one thing that this really swings in favor for the Bengals here, who are pretty much able to score at will, it feels like this year, is the Raiders' red zone defense severely lacks in efficiency. They have allowed a touchdown on 81.4% of the trips that have gone into the red zone on defense. That's 43 attempts, which is actually the most in the league as well. They're sitting at 43, which is 32nd in the league. That's actually one of the lowest in the league. So they've allowed 43 attempts into the red zone, and of those 43, 81.4%. So, I mean, they're like, anytime the team's getting in the red zone, more than likely they're getting a touchdown scored. That is something that the Raiders cannot allow the Bengals to do because they're so good. They don't even really get into the red zone as often as most other teams do in the league. But I mean, if for whatever reason, say the Raiders are playing them a little bit better, they're avoiding the big play. If Cincinnati gets into the red zone, they're a pretty efficient team there. And realistically speaking, the way we've seen them score, I would not be surprised to see them get into the end zone. The Raiders got to lock things down up in that that money zone, that green zone, whatever you want to call it there. They need to shut it down inside that 20 and try to prevent the Bengals' high-powered offense from getting their way into the end zone. Now, with all of that said, as for my over-under thoughts, and I am no better here, and this is not my betting advice or anything like that, but I've decided, the last few weeks, I kind of like giving my thoughts and opinions on them and just kind of see how those thoughts and opinions fare to the actual result later on. For the final score, the winners, what are the betting odds saying? The Bengals are currently sitting at the time of me recording this video, at a -5.5 favorite, whereas the Raiders obviously +5.5 there. And then the over-under is sitting at 49. Now, for Bengals being -5.5 favorites, that seems very realistic to me, especially based off the first time these two teams played. The Bengals pretty much handled their business and slapped the Raiders around for that 32-13 victory. Again, different time for the Raiders. They were dealing with a lot around the midseason, losing John Gruden, losing a couple of key players on the offense in Henry Ruggs, Arnett, and there was just a lot going on for the team. And they hit a really rough patch, I would say, in that middle point of the season, and they were probably pretty close to the bottom of the barrel and just at their lowest lows when these teams first met. So at -5.5, like if the Bengals do win, I definitely think that is something that is certainly possible there. Raiders upsetting at the 5.5, I don't really know about that. I feel like if the Raiders win, it's going to be off of like a last second field goal and they win by 2 or something like that. I don't know if the Raiders really have it in them to get up a whole score on the Bengals for the W. As for that over-under at 49, my final score is going to kind of give away my thoughts on this one. For my winner in this game, I do have the Cincinnati Bengals picked. I'm going 34-30 Cincy. And like I said, the over-under is 49. If I'm going 34-30 in a high-scoring affair, I could definitely see this one crushing the over. The over-under is set at 49, and a score of 32-13 when these two teams first played puts them at 45. If the Raiders even have a slightly better day offensively, that it easily surpasses that over-under number. I think both offenses, especially where they are right now, have the potential to go way over that over-under, and it might shift a little bit depending on as we get closer to the game. I'm obviously previewing this fairly early in comparison to some of the other games I'll be talking about as we get closer to the weekend, but I definitely think the over is very possible going into this one. But again, I do have the Bengals sitting at 34-30. I would love to know what you guys think in the comment section down below, so please, Bengals fans, Raiders fans, fire your shots, rep your team, let me know what you all think down in the comments below, and again, make sure you hit that like button, hit that subscribe button. I'm previewing games all week, so make sure you come back for the rest of the game previews as well if you're excited for Super Wildcard Weekend. All that good stuff. I hope you are as well. I will see you guys in the next preview video. Enjoy the rest of your Wednesday and have a good day, everybody.